Look, hydrofoiling has got a brand new branch that's exploding right now, and that's called power winging, power, oh my God. Hydrofoiling has got a brand new discipline that's exploding at the moment, and it's called string winging. Now, I get asked this question all the time: what gear do I need to get into the sport? And the truth is, it depends a lot on your experience, the conditions you ride in, and indeed your fitness levels. The chances are you've probably got most of it in your garage at the moment. If you're somebody that's comfortably foiling around, perhaps you're jibing and tacking on a wind wing, and you want to streamline the process, well, I'm going to give you my recommendations for the golden gear that I'm using at the moment. Some of it actually might surprise you, and if you stick around to the end, I'm also going to give you my top tips for the best conditions to look for also. So without further ado, let's get into it. Parawing, Parawing. So as a reminder guys, this channel is here to raise money for Bear Cottage, the children's hospice based here in Sydney. They provide 24-hour palliative care for paediatrics, and they need our help. By liking, subscribing and sharing the video, you help generate a revenue. So please go ahead, hit that button, comment below, do what you can to share it far and wide. Now on that note, I want to do a big shout out to the brands that do support me along this journey, and that's North, Foil Drive, WSS Boards, the Foil Board Company, Foil Sessions app, and of course Code Foils. Thank you guys. Without you, I simply couldn't do this. So let's start with the board, and I have landed on two different sizes, albeit a similar shape, which is that classic mid-length, what probably you are using for your wing at the moment. But I have tweaked the sizes, and I found that my normal winging mid-length isn't quite what I'm after. Now, the larger of the two is around 95 litres, and that's about 15 to 20% above my body weight at 80. So I find that this is really useful when the wind is quite light, it's fickle, or indeed I want to use a smaller power wing or a foil. It just gets me up nicely, it's easy. Now, of course, it's important that it's efficient and it gets up onto foil really quickly, but I don't want it to be too narrow. I want that roll stability, especially in the lighter stuff. Also, the length, if it's too long, you're going to have issues with swing weight and also with lines getting caught around the nose. So I found there's something around 6'2", 20 inches wide by 95 litres. That for me is the golden figures for being able to power wing in really light and medium conditions. The reason why I love this sport so much is that you can get away with using small boards, but word of warning, it does need to be a really good breeze, a really constant breeze. There is a point in that volume where there is a diminishing return, so don't go too small on this. And I found about 60 litres is pretty good for my 80 kilos. Yes, as I said, it needs to be a good breeze, but with the right conditions, it's incredible to be on a board that small. Once again, I want it to be efficient and I want a little bit of width there to give me that stability. Now, with that all being said, it is quite a privilege to have two boards. And if you're only going to get one, my recommendation would be slightly more than your body weight. So if I'm 80 kilos, I reckon around 85 litres would be spot on in that mid-length shape. Now, let's talk about wings now. I'm desperately trying not to say that word because I can't pronounce it. But anyway, I think you need something in and around that 4 meter. Now, if you go smaller than 4, then you just need a lot of wind. And with a lot of wind comes a lot of sea state, which is not ideal when you're learning. And likewise, in the larger sizes, the 5 meters, well, they're great. There's a lot of grunt, a lot of power, but they do require a bit more skill. There's a lot of material there, so packing away is harder. And also, if it's lighter wind, you just need a bit more flying skill. So my recommendation is something around 4 meters. This is the perfect combination of pack away and power. Now, with that, you need to keep in the back of your mind, you need a certain amount of wind in the early days, and I reckon it's 15 to 20 knots. That window is pretty narrow, but it does widen pretty rapidly as your experience levels increase. Look, as you get more into the sport, and I have no doubt you'll be as addicted as I am, you'll end up probably with 2, maybe 3 to cover you across the full spectrum. But that's quite an ask if you're just jumping in it straight away. So for 1, I'd go for the foil. In terms of which brand to go for, like quite honestly, they're all good at the moment and they will all get you out on the water. So don't pay too much attention to which one. Look, I have done a video of my top 5 with some pros and cons, and of course you can look back and see all of the different reviews that I've done. But my honest advice to you is that if you can find one that's available and it's a good price, then just go for it. Get out on the water, give it a go. Trust me, you won't look back. So for the foil, you want something that's easy to use, something you can turn, something that's got progressive lift, nothing too twitchy and nothing too high aspect at this stage. Obviously, you can experiment as you go on, but for the early stages, think back to when you were learning to wing. You want something that's just really smooth and easy. Now, in terms of size, again, you want something that's going to give you some nice early lift. And I reckon between 900 and 1100 centimeters for your average 80 kilo person is a really good sort of ballpark figure for those first few sessions. In terms of the foils I use, well, of course, I'm incredibly biased. I love the S series from Code. They are a match made in heaven for power winging. I think I said that right. Anyway, I use everything from the 615 up to the 1130. I would recommend an 1130 or a 980, something in that sort of range. They're perfect for getting up onto foil. You can turn them, you can pump them. They're just really user-friendly foils, and that's what you're looking for. So I want to talk a little bit now about masts, the lengths and the materials. And first off, I want to say that I don't think you need to go down this ultra high modulus route. The reason being is that you're tending not to use such spanny big foils. And so you can get away with just standard ones. Obviously, if you've got a high modulus, then you're going to get that advantage in pumping, but it's not a massive requirement. And then on to length. Well, I started using a 75 centimeter mast and I found that to be too short going upwind. I'd constantly have tip breaches. So I moved to the other end of the scale. I went to 85, and this one for me going downwind, I wasn't quite as efficient enough. I wasn't using the mast to the best of its abilities. A lot of it was just dragging in the water. So I've settled on an 80, and that's the one that I use all the time. I think that hits the nail on the head, the right balance, and that's my go-to. Now, as I said at the start, I want to talk a little bit about conditions because this is where I see most people making a mistake. And I'm going to put my hand up. That's exactly what I did at the start too. So rewind a year, I bought my first wing. I got out on the water, super excited. It was about 10 knots. It was on shore. And the whole process was a disaster. And funny enough, I did this about 3 or 4 times to figure out that, yeah, you need around 15 knots. To the other end of the scale, and I took it out in probably around 25 to 30 knots and got completely blown off the water. In fact, it was pretty dangerous. As I said earlier on, we're looking for between that 15 and 20 knots. We're looking for a sea state that's relatively flat. So if you've got like an inland or a bay, that's perfect. And we also want a nice, steady, consistent wind. We don't want this gusty conditions that's going to be on off the whole time. Look, I know it's easy to say and likely you're going to ignore all of this and just go around the water. You'll definitely avoid a lot of frustration and a lot of swimming if you stay within those boundaries in the first sort of 5 or 6 sessions. Look, it won't be long before you can expand your range. For example, I go out in conditions from like 8 knots all the way up to about 45 knots and have a great time. So the range is there, but once you've got the experience. Now, with all that being said, I want to highlight the fact that you don't need to go out and buy new gear. It's likely that you've already got the gear in your garage. I started off on my downwind board, and although it's not ideal, it's definitely doable. So you've probably either got a downwind board or you've got a wing board, and those ones are perfect. Likewise, the foil that you're using for either downwinding or winging, it will work in the right conditions. This is just the golden ticket, the golden solution. So I wouldn't recommend going out and buying gear straight away. Definitely get the wing and make sure you get that 4 meter. And then if you think this is something you're going to get into and you're really enjoying, well, maybe you can splash out a little bit and get the ideal gear that will really help the progression. So if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. Make sure you type away in the comments below if you've got any questions. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Until then, I will practice saying Parawing as much as possible. Parawing. Anyway, I'll get there eventually, I'm sure. And I'll see you on the water again soon. All right.